if you're an e-commerce store owner and you're selling within these emerging markets and you do not have Apple Pay, Google Pay, or PayPal on your e-commerce store, on your mobile, you're losing tons and tons of money. And like you said, when it comes to the exchange rates and currency, they solve those problems for you.
Hello everybody, welcome to Surge. This week we will talk about international enterprise e-commerce and how it relates to emerging markets. This is specifically true for emerging markets such as Africa, Middle East, Eastern Europe, and some parts of Asia. The reason that we're talking about this is because as Optimum 7, probably 90 to 95% of what we do is e-commerce, and we get a lot of requests from Fortune 100 companies as well as larger international operations. And it revolves around the fact that we talked a lot about in the past few weeks, we talked a lot about going 100% digital. And this is true for international markets as well, because the effects of COVID are felt everywhere in the world. So, Joe, when we talk about international e-commerce in emerging markets, what are some of the challenges that we hear from clients and prospects? And what are some of the challenges that we have been able to resolve for our clients?
So I would say the biggest issue when it comes to international e-commerce is logistics. We're seeing issues from accessibility, from customs, right? Are you shipping from that country, or are you getting that product from another country? Do you have a warehouse within that country? All of these things are playing a part, and at the end of the day, it's causing a logistical nightmare. And especially in some countries, such as Latin American countries, or even some Middle East countries, where there's just no delivery. There's no delivery service to these individuals who live in certain areas. So you're obviously now marketing to a much smaller demographic, much smaller market that you can actually access.
Correct. And when you look at giants like Amazon, I mean, Joe, Amazon is spending billions of dollars in logistics. They started doing their own shipments in the United States. They're building their own international shipments and customs departments. There's a reason for this, because Amazon needs to compete with Alibaba, and Amazon needs to compete with Flipkart. I mean, you heard the news yesterday. Flipkart bought Walmart India, which is a crazy acquisition. And Flipkart is getting too big. And this is an emerging market. India is an emerging market. And there are so many other markets like this. Now, you mentioned logistics. The second one that I would add is security and payment systems. Because when you're dealing with international shipments, or when you're dealing with emerging markets, you might not have the right technologies in that specific country and market to be able to do address verification system like an AVS. If you wanted to ship products to certain African countries, you're going to deal with payment issues. You're going to deal with currency exchange issues. Let's talk about AVS, the address verification system, first. Why is that important when you're running an e-commerce operation, Joe?
AVS, or address verification systems, are really the only way you can verify that an individual is in fact who they say they are, and they're shipping to the location that matches their billing information. And what this does is it allows you to catch that fraud before it comes through. And unfortunately, within these emerging markets, we see a ton of fraud.
And this is the reason why we should have a payment system or a module that integrates with the local, let's say local banks, local credit cards of that emerging market. But again, unfortunately, you don't have address verification system or methods with some of these banks. And they are very strict in who they issue credit cards to, and who, and sometimes, or most of the time, like I know this from some Middle Eastern countries and Eastern European countries, like Turkey, Ukraine, Azerbaijan, Uzbekistan, Tajikistan. These countries don't allow international orders, or their local credit cards to be used internationally, because there's a lot of fraud. So then the only thing you're left with is cash on delivery. And a lot of these emerging markets work with cash on delivery. The problem is that if you're shipping to an emerging market from another country, which is an international shipment, as Joe stated, it's a logistical nightmare because you have to deal with customs. And now add cash on delivery to that. Let's say you're shipping from Turkey to Azerbaijan, right? And you clear this item through customs, through whatever logistical nightmare that you fixed, and it's a cash on delivery, and the person is not home, or the person says, I didn't order this. Now the product needs to go back to the Turkish warehouse from Azerbaijan. It's going to cost you twice the money. So there are ways to resolve these issues, and Optimum 7 is very familiar with these processes to resolve these issues. And this is the type of consultation that we do for larger enterprise international customers of ours. So we mentioned logistics, Joe, we mentioned payment systems. Let's talk more about currency, because this is another very interesting detail of a nightmare that you go through. So if I have, let's say I'm shipping from Germany, and I want to ship to emerging markets like let's say Eastern Europe, and even I want to ship to Africa, right? Now, what happens is every country has a different currency, okay? And every bank or every credit card company or every merchant account is going to have a different exchange. I'm in Turkey right now, and Turkey uses Turkish liras, right? Now, if you're trying to ship to me from Germany, you're probably going to have an English speaking website, because English is the most common language, and you're probably going to list your items in dollars, let's say, right? Or in even euros. Now, what happens is when I use my Turkish credit card, it's going to take whatever currency exchange today from Turkish lira to euro or Turkish lira to dollar. But the exchange rate that I post on my website might be different from the exchange rate that the bank uses at the specific time of purchase with my Turkish credit card. So what happens is you might list something as 30 liras, right? And it's 200 Turkish liras, but my credit card statement comes and it's 201 Turkish liras or 202.5 Turkish liras. And then you're going to get so many chargeback attempts, because they're going to say, well, I ordered something for 200 liras. This is charging me 201. Who the hell is this company? So there's a way to fix this as well. And there are international systems that integrate and solve these currency issues. But unfortunately, a lot of the clients that we have or the prospects that we speak to are not aware of this. So this is another problem, currency issue. And Joe, we work with European customers. We work with companies in US that ship to Europe, and they have the same problem if they don't use an international provider.
So another thing, Duran, is working with all of these growing e-commerce companies that are selling in emerging markets. We're seeing that the majority of their consumers that are buying from them out of these markets are using their mobile phone, right? Over 90% of these individuals are using their mobile phone because the majority of them have.
Sorry to cut you off, but because they have probably 20, 30 times more mobile devices than laptops and desktop computers. As a matter of fact, most emerging markets, people bought mobile phones before they even had a computer.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So in this case, what we're seeing is if you're an e-commerce store owner and you're selling within these emerging markets and you do not have Apple Pay, Google Pay, or PayPal on your e-commerce store, on your mobile, you're losing tons and tons of money. And like you said, when it comes to the exchange rates and currency, they solve those problems for you. So, that's one less headache that you have to worry about if you just optimize for mobile with those payment options.
Yeah, that's great insight, Joe. And the last thing that I would mention before we wrap up here is the logistics from an inventory management standpoint. When you are dealing with international shipments, you have to track quantities. Perhaps you might be working with a third-party logistics system. I mean, at Optimum 7, we own and operate our own e-commerce businesses. So, for example, we send products to the UK, and we have a third-party logistics, a 3PL, that we use in UK that ships out of UK to UK, Germany, France, etc., etc. So you don't have to have a warehouse in that country or in those countries to be able to operate in those countries or in those markets. And the 3PL that you select, the inventory management that you select, how many containers are you going to send, how many SKUs, how many quantities of each SKU, the forecasting of this, right? And making sure that your logistics are in line with your sales forecast is another aspect of Optimum 7's consultation that we can help you with. And these things would need to be reviewed before you start this operation. So those are just a few of the things that we know Fortune 100 companies or larger enterprise companies experience in emerging markets. If you have any questions, please reach out to us. We'll talk to you guys next week.